to the 9th Urban Talk webinar by Prekabanda. And this particular one is a special collaboration between Prekabanda and Areka Books. Before we start, I would like to take this opportunity to promote Prekabanda's National Urban Design Awards, or NUDA. The purpose of this award is to recognize urban design projects of the highest quality and to encourage cities, towns, and communities across the country to strive for the best practice in all projects. The National Urban Design Awards acknowledge the importance and impact of inter and multidisciplinary teams in the livability of Malaysian cities and the sustainability of communities. We encourage the submission of multidisciplinary projects involving planners, landscape architects, and other disciplines. The awards offer the opportunity to receive a prestigious national recognition from a jury of experts in urban design. And we have some of the jury actually present here today as well. And the award recipients will receive featured media coverage in Prekabanda publication and website, as well as in the local press. So the deadline for the nominations is December 4th. So there's still some time. For more information, you can find the post about it on Prekabanda's Facebook page, or you can visit our website, prekabanda.org.my. The title of our webinar this afternoon is Mosques in Human Settlements. And we've got a fantastic lineup of panelists this afternoon. We have Patricia Fels, the founder of PTF Architects and author of the recently published Monsoon Mosques, Dato Architect Hajeedar Ar, the principal of Hajeedar and Associates, and a prominent figure in the Malaysian architecture scene. And finally, we have Architect Azim Aziz, principal of Arts Architects, who have also authored books on architecture. Moderating the webinar is Mr. Rahmat Bayudi, the Vice President of Prekabanda. And before we start, I would like to remind everybody watching on Facebook that we will share an attendance form, and you will receive an e-certificate if you fill this in. You can also type your questions and comments in the chat box, and we will share them with the panelists. With that, I wish you a fruitful session. Over to you, Mr. Rahmat. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nurul Azreen. I can't remember whether she remembers to introduce herself as Dr. Nurul Azreen, our very able facilitator for this Urban Talk series. We have had this series for some time, and we thank you everyone who has been with us, continue to support what we do and contribute to the engagement with Prekabanda. Again, my name is Rahmat Bayudi, Vice President of Prekabanda. For today, is my role to moderate. I am there's Mustafa Kamal, our usual moderator. I need a big hole to fill in. He has left for Dubai for Malaysia Expo, Dubai Expo 2020. So I am thankful for the trust by Prekabanda to get me to moderate these sessions. Again, this session, as we know, the ideal role of mosque or masjid in this case, I think we refer mostly here as masjid, besides the more global terms of mosque, as a house of God, is supplemented by its role as a catalyst for the community empowerment. There are regulatory frameworks enforced in most Muslim countries, Muslim majority societies. However, in a Muslim minority communities, such framework would be less significant, and other forms of consideration will be utilized. For example, the concentration of potential users in specific locations. In all scenarios, identifying the masjid development within a particular settlement becomes a significant urban design consideration. In this session, we have, as we know now, three very esteemed panelists who will be sharing their experiences in completing or managing new projects of masjid, as well as reviving old ones, and the various publications they have produced. The discussion will focus on the environment and social impact of these masjids to the community that they serve, besides the implied presence as landmarks and other forms of symbolism they represent in various contexts. And my role as moderator is to navigate the discussions towards an urban design imperatives, and in this case, the role of masjids in empowering communities to thrive, and so in relation to the book that was written specifically and the talk series in general. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, our panels, for agreeing to join us for these sessions. Patricia Fels from Italy all the way, We have Dato Ar Hajeedar Masjid down in KL, and also architect Azim Aziz also in Kuala Lumpur. Um, may I then start this session with our first panelist, Patricia Fels. And again, welcome to Urban Talk by Prekabanda. Patricia, how are you?
I am fine. It's pleasure to be here.
Thank
I wish I
you.
was in Malaysia.
Well, there you go. It's probably cold up there in Italy. And Patricia, let me read a bit of your biodata. An architect and historic preservationist and the founder of PTF Architect, as we know. Graduated from University of California, Berkeley. She has written about and worked on conservation projects in the United States, Italy, Malaysia, India, and Indonesia. It's extensive works. The research on the first book of the Mosques of Cochin was funded by the Ford Foundation. Monsoon Mosque expands the study of ancient mosques into Indonesia and Malaysia. And this is where we are very keen to hear from her today on how this came about. In addition to her lengthy career in architecture, she has written for a wide variety of journals. Thank you, Patricia. Maybe I would like to start this session by putting you to the fore and begin your presentation. Or shall I start with the questions? Is that what the presentation was supposed to be, starting with my questioning you? Yeah.
You can start with the questions. I love questions because then I see how you view all of this, and then I can respond. Yes, questions
Very well.
are fun.
First one, Patricia, what inspired you to write this Monsoon Mosque book? And perhaps some explanation on how the rather unique title came about.
Okay, it's a long story, and I'll try to shorten it. My interest in Islam and the mosque started in my university days, where I took a series of classes on the history of Islam and the architecture. So that was a beginning, a base. But then I, in the 1990s, I lived in Penang, which is where I met Salma. And she and I worked on the inventory of all the old buildings in Georgetown. My family and I lived right behind Masjid Leboace, and that was my neighbor. So I got to know the community and the mosque quite well. Okay, that's a beginning. Then in 2005, my husband received a Fulbright grant, and so we were living in Kochi in Kerala, which is in India, and I had been asked to write a series of articles about conservation. So I was interviewing people, and I met a man who was a counselor, Counselor Iqbal, and he was quite concerned about the fate of the 500-year-old old mosque in Kochi, in Kerala. And I have always been a passionate believer in saving old buildings, and he sort of roped me into this project of documenting this series of old mosques. We were working with the city, we were able to get some grants, and I did the research on these old mosques. And so then the first book, Mosque of Kochi, came out. But after that, friends and people I knew told me, well, you should expand this because there's this series of these timber mosques that are very unknown and that are for the most part in Asia and that have a direct relationship to the spice trade. Because in Kochi, Kerala was where pepper only grew in the beginning. And that's how Islam arrived in South India, was because of the pepper trade and the merchants and people coming. And then it spread to Southeast Asia on that spice route. So I'm going to, these mosques are all, the conversion into Islam and the whole process was all based on that spice trade. And the trade of all these amazing commodities. And things went both ways. Things went from Asia to Europe to Africa and back again. So there was this rich interchange. And Islam came with all this and spread throughout Southeast Asia. As to the title, I'm just going to read one paragraph from the book. The tropical mosque of the spice trade routes are a direct reflection of the place, wetlands and hills along a tropical coast with 2 annual monsoons. The materials available, abundant wood and local stone, and the religious custom, the need for a sizable hall for prayer, which protects the people from the heat of the sun and the intensity of the rain. They stand as powerful and visible expressions of the integration of Islam into the culture of tropical Asia. Oh, let's look at some pictures. Can you bring up some photos just so people can see? Our tech guy, can you bring up those photos? Okay. The first photo, yeah. Large wood framed roofs and fine wooden craftsmanship distinguish this vernacular, a typology that I call the monsoon mosque. It's not a rigid typology, but a collection of living responsive forms. So this is a mosque in Sumatra. And then the next slide, picture, photo. This is a mosque also in Sumatra where the local community really wanted to express the importance of their faith. And so they went with the 5 roofs. So we'll talk later about how these mosques relate to the community, because there's a very, very strong connection. And then the last picture here is a mosque in Kerala, in Calicut. And this is sort of this mosque is 500 years old, has stood for all these years, has obviously repairs are done, but has been maintained. And this is the secret, the mosques that have been maintained. There's a lot of timber mosques that I saw, because this journey I've taken, I would say, is a 15-year journey where I've been visiting these mosques during different times where I was working in India or working in different places. So it's been a long journey, and I've met a lot of fascinating people, and I've heard a lot of stories. I've listened a lot. My Malay ability to speak Malay has gotten a lot better. And anyway, so Monsoon Mosque comes, I hope that was clear where it came from.
Thank you for that explanation. We'll need to visit that in a minute in terms of how the name come about again. I think it will be fascinating to look at the commercial as well as the environmental relationship between those spice fruit and how the monsoon reflects that. Now, the second question is, Patricia, how much of the impact does establishment of these mosques, masjids, on the specific community? I think you already hinted that I will ask these questions, or society, and over the centuries, you're talking about, many centuries from then. Perhaps a bit more on this, please. Thank you.
Okay, so let's bring up the next slide. So the impact of the mosque, especially, and I'm going to just talk about now about Java in Indonesia, because I was amazingly impressed by, first of all, the openness of all these mosques. The old mosques, some of the new mosques have guards and they won't let you in, but the old mosques have this tradition of welcoming everyone. And so they serve as this center for the community. Java is one of the most populated places in the world. There's very little open space. Oh, wait, just stop for a minute. Can you go back? I'm sorry. Just go back one. Okay, so back, back one. Yeah, so basically these communities, the mosque is their center, and they have opened up to the community, and the mosque, as you can see, is up, the big roof thing. But these mosques serve many functions for the community. So we'll go through these quickly. You can see the women are doing their laundry. Okay, so this mosque right here is, can we go back again? Okay, just because I want to stress that this isn't just a village mosque, but throughout Java. This mosque is in Demak, and it is considered the sort of Mecca of Indonesia. It's where you go on pilgrimage. And the mosque is the three-tiered, the classic form that sort of what I call the monsoon mosque. This is just my topology. But all of these mosques have a pavilion, which is the structure off to the left. And that is the community gathering place. And the pavilion is one of the beauties of what happened when Islam came to all of these monsoon areas, is that the people, when they wanted to build a mosque, they took the local vernacular. They didn't start with something from somewhere else. They used the local vernacular. This is all pieces of the local vernacular, but they adapted it just as they slowly adapted the religion to their customs and their way of life. And so it's an amazing example of adaptation of the architectural forms along with adaptations of local customs. So in Java, the pavilion was not in modern Java so much, but still in these mosque compounds, it was the center, and it's where you went to gather, because obviously, just like Malaysia, it's really hot, and so people like to be in the shade. So these pavilions and the compound act as the center. So kids come, these kids are playing. This is one of the mosques. Okay, we can go pretty quickly now just to talk a little bit about these. So this one I love. This was a village mosque, and the ablution ponds, which in Java sort of sometimes surround the mosque, the kids are using it as a swimming pool. There's just an openness and a lightness about the way that these communities view the mosque as their center, and as sort of as a urban place where many things happen. Everything happens here because there is no other community gathering place. So you can go swimming, or the next slide. Okay, this is too fast. So this is a pavilion. This is the classic pavilion form of Java. And this is a pavilion at another pilgrimage site where they are repairing, rebuilding. So it's an ongoing process. This is a vernacular that is alive, where it's respected. In other places, they're tearing them down. But in this place, they are actually repairing and rebuilding. And these people are all just sitting because always you're looking for shade. And okay, and then the next slide is, these are men just, playing a game. And in this community, the mosque is where people from the market come, like people who've brought stuff in, they come and they can rest, they can take a nap, they can play games, they can talk to their friends, and all this happens in the pavilions. The actual mosque building is a little more kept for prayers, but these pavilions, and some mosques have just one giant pavilion. Okay, so hopefully we can see some of the other pictures, because there's some, okay, this is another important thing in an urban context. The mosque provide a wash place, not just for the ablutions for before prayer, but people from the community, like from the market, can come and can wash. And there's toilets, and it's for men and women, which is a great service in these communities. So it's like for modern times, we have so many problems with people not having a place to go, to sit, to use a bathroom and stuff. And here, these mosques from 500 years ago, they had these facilities. Okay, so we see another, I wanted to show you one of the large pavilions. So this is, once again, a place to rest, because this is a huge pavilion that people come, and it's a place in the shade, which is so important. I think there's one more picture. Oh, this is another of these compounds. And in fact, this one's very interesting, because this was a former Hindu Buddhist place, and they kept the outside walls and then built the timber mosque in the middle. And this is, again, in a very dense place. And this is where kids come to play. So it serves as this center. After school, kids come through here, and they can play. And then I think there's one more. Oh, yeah. So this gives you an idea of the scale of some of these pavilions. This is in Surakarta. And this is actually one of the royal mosques built. Many of the mosques were built by communities, but this one was actually bought. There's many princes and kings and sultans in Java. But you can see the expansiveness of this, and different times of the day, different people are there, people come to meet, and it's all very open. Off here to the right, that's the actual mosque where you can go, a beautiful mosque, beautiful timbers, well maintained. And after having seen so many mosques that had sort of deteriorated, this is a very favorite photo of mine of the men in the shade at the pavilion. So I guess I'm sort of a call for the beauty of pavilions, and the mosque people, the mosque communities that have conserved those, I think, are the richer for that.
Thank you. That is an amazing sharing and the various uses of the spaces within the community that reflects the layers of functions of what mosque and masjids are actually providing for the society. I'm sure Dato Hajeedar or Azim will have many things to reflect on this. So we'll leave you for now, Patricia. We'll move on to Dato Hajeedar for his presentation, and I would probably start with introducing Dato Hajeedar, if I may. First of all, we all know that he's a kind of a reference person in architectural world in Malaysia. Born in 1945 in Kuala Lumpur, graduated in architecture from Portsmouth Polytechnic, UK, and served the Urban Development Authority UDA in late 70s, and been in private practice since 1978. It's been a while. Among projects completed, high-rise offices, apartments, hotels, homes, conservation and restorations of Malaysian historic buildings, and 14 masjids, or musola specifically. We are in a masjid seminar. So among the masjids are in Bangsa, IIUM, the National Mosque of Republic of Maldives as an international work. He is also past president of PEM, Malaysian Institute of Architects, and past president of ICOMOS Malaysia, and also recipient of PAM Gold Medal Award in 2012. And he has just published his own autobiography, Thinking Hands of Hajeedar. And also, that was the first book, and there's the autobiography, forgive me, Hajeedar Journey in Architecture 2020. And without further ado, I'd like to bring Dato Hajeedar onto the stage, and over to you, Dato Hajeedar.
Yeah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Salam.
Okay. Mr. Moderator, you have given us 3 questions. So I have combined all the questions and tried to put it within this presentation that I have prepared for the benefit of our viewers. I'll start off with this title page in which I have illustrated 2 of the 3 areas very reverent to Muslims. The first is Mecca on the top left-hand corner. It's a sketch I did of Mecca in 1980 when I did my Hajj. And you will see on the top of the hill is this Masjid Quba. And that's where the Khatab. So, and of course, the third holy place for Muslims is the Masjid Al-Aqsa, which I have not visited. Therefore, I have no sketch for it. So with that brief introduction, I will try and share some of my thoughts with regards to the title of your forum today on the mosque as a feature within the human settlements. Yeah. Okay, as mentioned for the Muslim community, and it embodies the tangible as well as the intangible, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual needs of the Ummah, i.e., the people. In the house of Allah, for congregational prayers, especially for Friday Salat, where members perform congregational prayers, unified in the worship of one God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and to stand equal in rows or saf, facing the only direction of Kaaba in Mecca. So the masjid is also embraces as a nucleus for the following activities: learning place for all religious, literary, social, and scientific subjects. It is also a court where justice can be heard and demonstrated. It is also a social political forum where citizens discuss their problems with the Khalifa or the leaders. And with the spread and greater awareness of Islam, the need for a masjid in the physical context of human settlements becomes more apparent. And this was mentioned in Patricia's introduction today. So masjid architecture has developed from various local vernacular values of culture, ethnicity, climate, and the finer artistic expressions of the people, while abiding with specific one wishes to build a masjid. Irrespective, you have to build the masjid facing the Kaaba. So it is up to the designers and the people to ensure that the direction is correct. These guiding principles have resulted in a variety of forms and design throughout the world, with each masjid reflecting the social acceptance or acceptability, comfort, and identity within their respective communities. Sometimes a masjid can be designated within existing historic structures to function and fulfill the Ummah's needs. These we have seen a lot in Europe, and where all places of worship such as churches and cathedrals have been converted to mosques today. A classic identity are the Nusantara Masjid, reflecting the regional vernacular tropical architecture to suit the hot, wet, and humid climate as mentioned by Patricia today. Now, all the above ideas and principles were then assimilated and integrated within the social structure, resulting in the notable evolution of the culturally rich masjid designs around the world, and as we know today, even in our country, Malaysia, we see a lot of local influences. Okay, coming back to perhaps the reason why I've been invited is that I have been fortunate and blessed with the responsibility of designing a few masjids and musallas. In fact, I've done 15, not 14, but 15, forgot to include one other just now. So it started from as early as 1980 when I was invited to quickly put up some mosques within a new
apology. I think we have.
I will come to the details later.
Yeah.
Then in 1982, I was fortunate to be involved with the residents to initiate the construction of Masjid Abu Bakar as-Siddiq. And then subsequently, there were other masjids that I have listed there. Saidina Usman Alfan in Cheras, the National Mosque of the Republic of Maldives, the Masjid Kayu Hitam, Masjid Geliga Besar in Kemaman, Masjid Petronas in Kerteh, the Musalla at Victoria Institution, my alma mater, Masjid Haji Sultan Ahmad Shah at the UIA campus in Gombak, and two musallas of Precinct 8 and Precinct 9 in Putrajaya, and the Masjid Jami Sultan Abdul Aziz in Section 3, Kawasan Melayu, Petaling Jaya. And last but not least, a Musalla Al-Majid within the compounds of the University of Malaya. So those are some of the images of the hotels. So the first one, this is my first real project, real masjid that I designed and helped build. As I mentioned earlier, the government was opening up new areas for agricultural settlements, including Felda, but in Johor, it was called Kejora. So they had townships, and in compliance with the Sharia, the need for a masjid became very obvious and apparent. So masjids were quickly built in Bandar Kejora, Bandar Mas, and Pengerang in 1980. The design form was a very simple takeaway from what Patricia has indicated just now of the Nusantara masjid, especially from the Sumatran as well as the Javanese influence. So it's very basic. Design form was on an elevated timber masjid with a square plan and 2 tiers of pyramidal roof for providing cross ventilation with the minbar located at the Qiblat concrete structures today. Next, please. Okay, then Masjid Saidina Abu Bakar as-Siddiq. This is a classic reference that I like to make. There was no provision or site identified for religious purposes within Dato Nik Farid, the QS, and the late Dato Hashim Ghani, who just passed away last week because of COVID. Yeah? And this was built between 79 and 82, and then officiated by the Yang di-Pertuan Agong then, Sultan Ahmad Shah, in July 1982. Now, working closely, before we built the mosque, we worked very closely with the Mufti of the Wilayah Persekutuan, Dato Sheikh Abdul Muhsin Saleh, to develop a brief that will answer the community needs of a masjid today, then, as opposed to what it was before, which we just inherited from the tradition. So the brief was developed and subsequently became the modern masjid template for community needs elsewhere too. Now extensions were added as the requirements grew with the community. Now, its success and practicality as a masjid, a modern masjid typology, was emulated in the Masjid Saidina Usman in Cheras and as far away from Bangsa at Masjid Geliga Besar in Kemaman. This masjid, when it was completed, also attracted international attention, and I was appointed to replicate it as the national mosque and the Islamic center for the Republic of Maldives, which was completed in 1984. So the illustrations earlier shows Masjid Bangsa. Of course, then I move on to these were the move on to the mosque in the Republic of Maldives, which was named after their earlier Sultan Muhammad Takaruful. It is an architectural landmark on the main island of Malay and was officiated by the then President Maumun Abdul Gayoom in 1984. It was then the largest reinforced concrete structure ever built in the Indian Ocean, with a capacity of 5,000 worshippers, a library, the bilik jenazah, and conference facilities. I've given the quote there of President Maumun. If you look at the photographs, that was me, my standard long hair appearance then, that it is not your doing or my doing, but it is Allah's will that you should design our mosque. And Alhamdulillah, the mosque was completed with a lot of assistance, financial assistance from other Muslim nations. And from the photograph, you will see that even Mr. Yasser Arafat was there during the construction. Next. Next, please. Hello? Okay. Subsequently, the Masjid Petronas. Again, this is the result of the need because there is a migration or the creation of a new community in the Ketre region in Terengganu, where Petronas had the oil and gas industry established, and there was an increase in number of people in there who were mainly Muslims. So therefore, there was a need to build a mosque in Kerteh. Hence, the Kerteh Petronas Masjid, which for the first time, because we had the luxury of land, we were able to incorporate a sahan or a courtyard between the mosque, as referred to Patricia just now, the various pavilions that is just outside the prayer area for the public to participate and hang out. So this is part of the service or provision that we have incorporated in the Petronas Mosque, because it is also en route on the East Coast, North-South East Coast Road. So it is a very convenient mosque to stop over to do your prayers. Okay, next. Of course, this divided in 3 levels and up to 12,000 if the Jama'ahs were to fill in on Fridays the 3 sahans or courtyards around the mosque. It was developed with the concept that the masjid is the physical center and focal point of the university community of students and academicians, with circumferential concept of comfortable walking distance linkages within the campus so that nobody can give an excuse that they are unable to get to classes or wherever. Okay, and those are the image. And again, for the first time, we had the luxury of constructing 2 minarets. In the past, most of the mosques I did had 1 minaret. So UIA had 2 minarets. Then I was pleased to be appointed to do 2 musallas. But of course, they came one after the other. The first one was in Precinct 8, was the first project in Putrajaya for me, within the limited, very limited site, as large as a bungalow site, and budget, but it was most satisfying architectural project. The challenge was to interpret the differences between a masjid and a musalla, and also in so doing reinstating the original eco-balance of the site, which was jungle and then plantation, and then finally into Putrajaya, while answering the community's physical and spiritual needs because they live nearby. Okay, you will see that I have the plans, the musalla in the middle of a water feature. No, you can go to the next slide. Middle of the water feature. It stands on its own. It echoes the Kaaba, but it is not black. You know, if it were black, then somebody would say that I have echoed the Kaaba full scale and nobody will go to Mecca for Hajj. Anyway, notwithstanding that, this here document is my rationale for the difference and the facility, the function of a musalla within that immediate community. So, so far, Alhamdulillah, it has served its function, and I think the residents have appreciated it more than I expected into making some rather unsavory extensions to the project, which has destroyed the originality of the musalla. That's my take. Okay, next. Next slide, please. Okay, in 2008, we completed mosque. With the consent of the Sultan of Selangor, a new Masjid Jami in PJ was built to replace an earlier one that was built in 1964 with a smaller capacity. And when we finished this mosque, the capacity was increased to 4,200 Jama'ah within the building. We had a multi-purpose hall that would welcome not only the Muslim community, but even the non-Muslim community, as well as shops, classrooms, and for the first time, a dialysis center to serve the people who has medical problems and need. It now serves the greater part of Petaling Jaya. So I think it was quite a satisfying project for me then. Next. Okay, last but not least, I call this as a nice little story from Bangsa to the University of Malaya. The inspiration is to use the original wooden doors from Masjid Saidina Abu Bakar As-Siddiq in Bangsa, which had dutifully functioned since 1982 for 30 lamps from the mosque at the mimbar, and some other doors reused at the main entrance. And this symbolizes the continuity of the doors as the material witness in our journey, in their journey from Masjid Bangsa to a humble musalla located at the Faculty of Arts and Social Sciences Park within the University of Malaya campus. The musalla was built for the convenience of students, residents, and visitors and can accommodate about 80 Jama'ah for prayers. And I just name it out of respect and love for my father. It's called the Musalla al-Majid. Okay, next please. So I think in conclusion, oh no, okay, currently we've done two proposals for a modern eco-interpretation of a masjid with no compromise to the fundamental and traditional expectations and perception of Malaysian Malay Muslim community, and as inspired by the natural structure of the rebung, which is bamboo shoots and trees. So this was a proposal made a couple of years ago, but it hasn't materialized. Next, please. Okay, this is the last slide. Islam encourages the mindful sharing of knowledge, which we are doing now, expressing of beauty in fine arts, and living in constant harmony with nature and caring for human needs. It is important to know our historical context, appreciate our traditions and culture because they provide much enrichment to our faith in Islam and the quality of our life and heritage. And this can be achieved through the exchange of experiences, knowledge, research, and application of our own understanding. Alhamdulillah, I hope I have shared such lessons in respect of the salient qualities of masjid design and therefore seek your indulgence and acceptance in this presentation. Sekian, terima kasih. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you. Rahmat, back to you.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi taala wabarakatuh. Terima kasih. Thank you, Dato Architect Hajeedar Ar Hajid, on the presentation of his works. Actually, he was reflecting on the questions that we sent to him. So what was sent, I'm just going to recap on that. We wanted him to share because of the recently published autobiography. So it's part of the task is to share some of the work that he's done, which is done, and the understanding of the role of mosque in masjid in our community. The other part also, I think he has extensive experience in describing how masjids get built in this country, in Malaysia especially, in comparison to other countries, which is done. And especially the participatory aspect of how the community, the committee of the masjid, and how the whole process of fundraising and stuff, which perhaps we can probably go into that in the later sections of today. So we shall leave you there for now, Dato. We want to move on to the next panelist today, which is Architect Azim Aziz. May I present to you Architect Azim Aziz as a description, as a short introduction that he gave. Not short, is 1 page long, yeah, but I will try to condense it as much.
Yeah,
Azim graduated from Louisiana State University in 1987. He started work with the big Team 3, Jurubina Bertiga, and specifically under Dato Baharudin Kasim. This company has been responsible for many masjid building in this country and the region. And he started ATSA in 1994 and 92, apology, yes, 1992, and from sole proprietorship to partnership and body corporate. Firm's design philosophy emphasizes on client requirements, of course, and user experience above the imposition of any particular designs. So very diverse, and his goal is to achieve award-winning designs. There you go. So from there on, we moved on to what he has done. Apart from architecture, Azim had written several books on architecture and documented more than 25 years of ATSA's work on mosque architecture. And as an avid architect, he would produce several other books. And we forgot to mention he won mention in recent book prizes on the World Masjid or collection of selected masjid, and also the local Malaysian, specifically the Masjid Negara, yeah, the established Masjid Negara, our national mosque. Azim is also interested in setting up architectural research, as he feels the profession lacks in its own information and data that can be readily used to understand the direction of profession. Apart from designing modern architectural structures, interestingly, he has also actively involved in conservation and preservation works of several very notable traditional buildings, including the recent one, which is the Masjid Kampung Laut, one of the oldest masjid in this country. With that, I would like to put Azim onto the stage for you to start your presentation. Please, Architect Azim.
Thank you, Rahmat. Thank you all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. I'll just jump in because I like to show. I wish I have time to show all, but I hope I do. And I'd like to begin and sharing the slide. And let me see whether I can share the slides now. Can we see now?
It's coming, yes.
Okay, then I just try to change it to slideshow.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I'll go straight to the topic on hand. It's basically from our thinking, our works, and what we are doing currently in response to the contemporary requirements of a masjid, or as well as to make it as useful as we can, as masjid in this present day is more than just a place of prayers. So I'll go straight and to show how we address this, these important requirements. Like I said, the mosque traditionally, as we always been known, is just a place of worship, to pray to Allah, and it's also part of Tawhid and a unifying factor. The mosque is becoming necessary as we go along, as Malaysia has developed on its own after independence as a community center and of our social life, and it's been building over the years. And I think the purpose of masjid has expanded over the years, and sometimes we have to go back, like Dato Hajeedar and also Patricia has said that certain times we have to go back and look at what has been done in previously and use it back in the modern times. Sometimes we lose our perspective when we're building a new mosque. It is also has becoming a one-stop center for Muslims and Islamic center for Muslims. So if you're a Muslim or you're you want to get more information, or you want to be taught or get married, or even pray or mengaji or learn the Quran, normally masjid is also the place to go, or even to have a syarahan at night or baca doa. We always use the masjid. So the masjid, unlike any other structures, religious structures, has become more than just a place of prayers. So it is a continuous usage, and it's important that the government know that it is worthwhile to spend the amount of money, because it's not cheap to build a modern mosque, and to use it more for the community. I'll show the next slide. This is what we are getting at as a population of Malaysia, and we are fast becoming, we are 61% of Muslims, and it's growing. It will go up to maybe close to 70% in years to come. And on top of that, what worries many is that we are fast becoming an aging population. aging population is in the definition of UN is everyone that is above 65 years old, and you become an aging population when you reach 15% of your population. You will reach that in soon by the year 2030. So we have, especially in human settlements in urban areas, if you are retired and you have no work and nowhere to go, and you have to, if you're living in a small apartment or a house, you need to go somewhere, in order to meet your friends or to have a reason to go out and live a life that is probably worthwhile, and also to learn from others, from religion. Most Muslim, when they reach to this age, they become more religious. So the mosque has become a place where they congregate and to learn more on the religion. Yeah. So if you look at the population pyramid, and it's growing in the next 10 years, that our population will become more of I'll explain this more in my last project, last slide. So some works that we are doing, this is recent works I'm talking about 5 years beyond 5 years in the past. So what we try to approach in our mosque design is always a contemporary progressive Islamic architecture. What happened was in 1957, when we gained our independence, there is a period where we call it um, post-Merdeka architecture. There's nothing to do with Islamic architecture, nothing to do with colonial architecture, and it's all about new architecture. Then in the 80s, we are becoming more Islamination of Islam. So we try in our architecture as well, try to copy every version of um, Islamic architecture around the world. So if you are in Malaysia, you can have a mosque that is replicate from a Turkish and from Egyptian, from all sorts of countries around Islamic countries around the world, and that has already been 30 years. And I think it comes to a point that we need to change that perception. We don't want to go for another 30 years thinking of the same building, the same sort of mosque, using the same sort of typology. This is a mosque in Cyberjaya. Cyberjaya, as you know, is located not very far from here. It's actually next to Putrajaya, our capital city of Malaysia, a new capital city. And Cyberjaya was probably built the same time, about 25 years ago. But 5 years ago, they having a problem of building a mosque. So that was about 20 years trying to build a mosque. And eventually they appointed us they didn't have a land, to help them find a land and also design a mosque that is to reflect Cyberjaya. As you know, Cyberjaya is also IT hub for Malaysia, so it has to reflect that, and also a sustainable township. So it's more of a township that has been about 20 years at a particular time. So this is located at an area which was given to proposed University Islam Malaysia, and they allow us to 15 acres to build a green mosque. So we design the brief for them under Cyberview, because they are not too sure what sort of mosque they wanted for this place. So we approach it in a way that it has to be a community mosque within the 100 acres of proposed University Islam Malaysia. The University Islam Malaysia is not built yet, although there's a master plan. So the shape of the building, the location, the land that we were given follows the master plan. That's why you can see that it's in a rather awkward sort of position. So because the plan has been approved by the local authority and also the Selangor Sultan. So this is some of the images. Going back to what Dato Hajeedar was saying, that we also try to incorporate, because of land, we try to incorporate the courtyard design, which worked very well, and bring back the courtyard design to the um, mosque. And we have the main prayer hall, which is air conditioned, and the rest of it is overspill area, which is not air conditioned, and it's only be cooled by using a fan. And we also have Islamic garden, which is right in the front. Uh, Here is for people to congregate before or after prayers. Now, as you know, Cyberjaya is more like a international town, and it's an international township. And if you pray there on Fridays, you, as a Malay or Malaysian, you are probably the minority, because you have all sorts of people from various countries come here to pray. And this is how it turned out to be. It was not been planned in that way. So this is how it looked like. Um, we're using modern architecture, and one of the things that we include in this design is solar panels. And we know that the mosque will need to be expanded in future. So we designed a mosque with a usable rooftop, which will be probably be used in years to come. That's the picture in front of it is the Islamic garden, the scented champaka tree, and seating for people to sit around after prayers mainly. And below the minaret, I know minaret is very expensive. This one costs about 800,000 ringgit. And below it is an ablution. So you can go to the mosque and take your ablution before entering it. That's our idea. Before entering to the mosque, you have the ablution, and it can be well spotted. That is how it is. The Islamic garden and all the ablution and the minaret. The minaret is just a simple minaret. We use it. We use a lot of metal, prefabricated, and be installed. It's installed due to cost. And this is how the mihrab looks like. This is actually they had a different design, but the Sultan of Selangor wanted to use timber because timber is very prevalent in our culture, so we use that as our description of the mimbar and the mihrab and the mimbar. This inside of it, how it is, well lighted up because we are using glass dome, triple glazed glass dome, to allow natural lighting. And that's the courtyard. And a lot of our buildings, a few of our, not all, we haven't done as many as Dato Hajeedar, but we've done a couple of mosques. So one of the things that to identify our mosque is that we use a signature tree that in the courtyard or outside, which is the Bunga Tanjong. It's a medicinal scented tree, and it grows very well, and it's a deciduous trees and provide shade to the area. So this is at night, and then on the left there is a pool. The pool is an experiment by our side, is to have as a cooling agent. So the idea as a green mosque is that you only use the air condition during Friday prayers because it's going to be fully packed. Before the COVID, it's going to be fully packed. So the water will help to cool the mosque during normal times. So you don't have to turn on the air condition. And one of the things that we incorporate into our design is a bazaar, because normally we have Friday bazaar and Ramadan bazaar, and this is where all the traders will come in and sell their food. Little that we know that the Sultan is not very in favor of a bazaar because of the waste that it creates. So at the moment it's there, but it's not in use. One of the things that I mentioned, that we provided the rooftop with solar panels, and the solar panels, although it's not all in use now, but eventually installed now, eventually it will be with solar panels and will generate its own electricity, and also will provide shade once the mosque is fully occupied and you need more space, and it will be like in Medina or even in Masjid al-Haram that you can pray on the rooftop. On top of that, we had several discussion to have a community hall, because as you know, in Malaysia, if you get married, you invite the whole town to your wedding. So and it's very costly. So this is a nicely designed community hall, which is multi-purpose. You can also play badminton here, and also having seminars. But mainly is for banquet. It has own kitchen or preparation area, so it will be you can get akad nikah at the mosque and just walk over to have your reception.
Yep.
So this is for the community. This is taken from below. This is the glass dome that I mentioned, and little that I know, when we were designing that, it provides a nice decoration. And at the center, actually, we have this big fan, the huge fan, but it's covered, because I did not like the industrial look of the fan. So we use some design, Islamic design pattern to cover the look of the fan, how it looks from outside. We also have sun shading to stop from direct sunlight hitting up the glass. So we have a metal louvers outside, and you can see the light and shadow play, because every day there's going to be a different sort of environment, because the sun, because not the sun move, the earth move, but you can have a different sort of mood every day in the masjid. And this is another picture of the same thing. The other one is that it's a Merdeka Mosque. This is something that we won recently on the Baku International Award as one of the unrealized project, as I think was silver or bronze medal. It was it's supposed to be next to the Merdeka Stadium, and there's a small area where it is actually located next to one high-rise building, which is going to be the second tallest building in the world. And we try to move towards using a raised up mosque, because we use the analogy of the rumah kampung, or the kampung house. All our kampung houses are all elevated, so all the main prayer hall is up in the on the upper floors. So you leave the ground floor open, and also you can use for prayers as well. So this is the main entrance, and we have 99. I know it's a bit high, 99 meters minaret, symbolizing the 99 names of Allah. And this is how it looks. It is actually following the site, which is a triangular site with a dome at the center, and a courtyard facing the entrance to the Merdeka Stadium. So this is where the main staircase goes. As I mentioned earlier, that it's the mosque is on the top. Obviously we have handicap lift to bring people up. Although you can pray on the ground floor as well. This is a night shot, and how it looks in the interior of it.
Okay, Azim, can I chip in for a bit?
Yeah.
Just to an amazing. I think the first mosque, the first masjid that we saw, I go there a lot. I think it's an immense effort, and provides like a new typology to the way we do. And I think there is also element of getting the community development and community facilities on site. Perhaps I can maybe pinpoint specifically, if you can. Is there anything that any of these projects? I know you have immense collections of it. I think you did say you had less than Hajeedar, but I mean, I think the scale of it is different. Which one would you like to point out to become like a catalyst towards a better urban design impact in the community, especially in a specific development? Just now we saw Sabajaya, but is there anywhere else that you can point?
My last
I ask this because I was told you had 81 slides. There's a lot. So
I'll
just to
go
know.
fast. I'll go
Yes,
fast.
please. Yes,
I'll go
please.
fast very fast.
Thank
But
you.
last slide of it will be the nice,
Yeah.
the one that is not been built, but is
Mm.
something that I did on a theoretical mosque, how
All right.
to do with the growing community of
Yep.
Muslim community in the urban areas.
Yep.
Because as you know, Malaysians are a growing population. There's
Yes.
about four major mosques, not including Musala and Surau, that's built
Yep.
every year. Then
Yep.
four per state, which is about 40 per year.
Yep.
So
Yep.
that's a lot.
Mm.
I'll go fast. I know that like I want to provide some of this approaches that I think some of it has not been tried on upon. So and some of the historical that we have to keep this is one of it is the heritage, which is an abandoned mosque that for 20 years that has not been used. They want to demolish it, and I was asked to help out. This I did on the side, not involving any government agency, and
Okay.
even raise the money lah. So this is 100-year-old mosque next to the Perak River, and it's dilapidated and unused. So what we had to do, it was very beautiful mosque and never been extended, and that's what attracted me most, because a lot of the mosques, as you know, they're going to be extended over the years.
Yeah.
Except for the roof, we changed. So after a while, we managed to document it, and this is the mimbar, which is very historical mimbar done by one very well-known cover, and this is where we moved it in a township. Although the setting is different, this is a modern township. The Majlis Ugama Islam Perak gave us a half an acre site, so we rebuilt it. We use Senggora tiles. We allow in area for garden area for them to have tents out, so that when if they have a kanduri, they can use it, or wedding and all that, they can use this as a area where they can invite people for gatherings and all that. So this is I'm very happy that we managed to continue the mosque. Now from a mosque they turn into a surau. Now they turn into a masjid back, because as not all surau can turn into a masjid. So now, upon request, they have turned it into a masjid. So even the kola, the evolution was made of concrete, was also original. We transport it out from on a big trailer from the original site there. So we have to incorporate modern amenities like proper lighting and all that, so that they can be used. Now that we're doing another Kota Community Mosque, which is under construction, almost completed. This is not the latest image, but this is what it is actually an extension from Cyberjaya Mosque, and it will be completed in next 2-3 months. It's about 4,000 people, and one of the things that we did was that we allow for the exterior area with a hard stand to be used as an extension. I noticed extension, when population grows, people are praying outside of the mosque, and it has to be proper. This is our recent one. It's a Kuala Pilar, which I was finding something that is different. Kuala Pilar is in Negeri Sembilan, and what we did was we designed it in follow the nine sided design, which is also reflecting of Negeri Sembilan. And how we plan, it's not very big. It's only about 1,500 people. And what we did was we using this folded roof with using metal. Metal is lightweight, and the minaret, and following the Minang architecture in a subtle way to reflect the Minang architecture. Minang, as you know, is from Sumatra, and from there, and it's also well ventilated to allow for free flow of cross ventilation. And again, our approach to minaret is to make sure that it is lightweight. No point building very expensive minaret, which is only used for visual identification. This is the compound layout that we are doing now. We are not the architect for this project, but because we are quite not to say known, but we do a lot of writing on mosques. So the EC appointed us to write the book, a coffee table book on the mosque. And we got a good team. Even Salma is also involved, and Johan, a very good photographer. So it is actually said to be the oldest mosque in Kelantan, and it's the same in line as the Demak Mosque that Patricia was showing just now. And now is moved back to Kampung Laut. As you know, in 1967 there's a big flood, and the mosque is almost gone into the Kelantan River, and has to be moved to Nilampuri, which is quite a distance and away from the river, and now is being brought back to Kampung Laut, and because of technology and understanding of how it can be protected, so they decided to move it back to Kampung Laut. So this is the first Tiang which has been constructed. As you can see at the foreground, at the background is the Sungai Kelantan.
Yeah.
And then this is the original. It's about 40 feet solid chengal timber that's been preserved and installed. We are now trying to carbon dating it so that we know how long it is, what's the age of it, and how they install it over time. And that is Buah Buntun. Buah Buntun is actually the cone on top of the peak roof, the pyramidical roof. It's actually a Buah Buntun. It's a fruit sort of thing. That is a huge thing which is going to be installed right at the top of it. So this is Malaysian Day, and someone is waving their flag, and they have installed although it's not the original Senggora tiles, but they installed a tiles that is longer lasting tiles. And Kampung Laut, as you know, is a heritage kampung, which produces a lot of many good things, food, even handicrafts. And although I won't, because I was not the architect, so although I can't comment much on the design, we are documenting it and writing about it, and it's going to be completed by sometime next year once it's done. And as you can see, it is quite an extensive work, and try to preserve as many as possible. They have to demolish some of the houses which is there, and to incorporate this back. It's not on its original site. It's just about
it's the closest to it. The closest to original.
Yes.
Yeah. Architect Azim, I think before we go further, can we sort of we have only another 15 minutes or so before we end. We have questions we need to address to by the very interested pattern. Maybe some of the questions that I ask you, you can address it when in our sessions.
Yes.
I think we can do that. Thank you. Shall we get back to everyone in the panel? Thank you, Architect Azim. It's an amazing experience, an amazing sharing of those structures that we have seen, and how the masjid has developed from what it was. And I think we will look forward to the way the later designs can come through, like what we're seeing right now. Now, we also have questions from the floor, from the screen that we have here. May I brought back to what Patricia, hi Patricia, are you still there? Yes. From what you said just now, we've seen Hajeedar, we've seen Azim. Some of the pointers you put up and the typology of monsoon mosque, how do you see that reflected in the contemporary mosques or masjids that we're seeing? Can you make some comment on this, Patricia?
Oh, it's hard for me to comment on that, because I was quite pleased to see the use of the mosque being raised to respond to the Malay system of a raised house. Obviously, no one's building in wood anymore, which is, you know, I mean, seeing the old mosque being restored, one sees that. And I might just mention that in the United States now, because of the Green Revolution, wood has been rediscovered. And because it turns out that wood is more ecological and environmental because it can be renewed than concrete and especially concrete, which is very dangerous for the environment. And so in the long run, what's happening is that we're returning to wood to build, like in my hometown of Seattle, we're now building 8, 10-story buildings using wood. Obviously, it's engineered wood, but we are returning to a use of wood in an attempt to create something that's more sustainable. So it'll be interesting if any of the new mosques return to that tradition of the great wood sheltering roof.
Thank you, Patricia. That's a very telling comment. I think, yeah, even the recent last year completed the Cambridge Mosque, Cambridge Masjid in Cambridge, is predominantly timber in construction. That's very interesting. I have a question from the audience in our social media addressed to maybe this one, Dato Hajeedar. Do you think it's possible to promote mosque or musalla designs today with traditional Malay mosque tiered roofs and greater use of timber? Again, on the timber over concrete as is it possible? Dato Hajeedar. Dato, are you you need to unmute yourself, please. You need to unmute yourself, please, Dato. Dato Hajeedar, you need to unmute.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, it is possible to revert back to the construction of timber, but as you know, that most of our better dilemma we have, the better timber are exported. Today, there is this new technology of glue glue laminated timber, and that it has been successfully promoted by our Malaysian Timber Board, and that there have been buildings which I happen to be one of the assessors for and that has been particular. Now, if you recall my presentation just now, there was one design where I had proposed glue lam structure to go back and revert back into timber, and let's because today with the new technology, you don't have to have an entire tree to be your column. You could combine and glue the pieces together, and you can still achieve the same kind
I think we may have some connection problem there. Apology.
My client who wanted that particular design has since decided not to participate anymore. So the design, now the design is there and it can be implemented at any venue. In fact, yeah. So timber can. After all, we are known for timber, you know, and it's just that because Azim is talking about was talking about Masjid Kampung Laut.
Yes.
You know, I have just successfully campaigned to preserve a 200-year-old small masjid, Masjid Parit Istana in Sri Menanti, and that's 200 years old. But there's a lot of wear to that, but it has to be restored somehow. So this is the challenge that we have today. But again, timber is getting more and more expensive when you compare to the other alternative materials
Yeah.
for construction.
Yeah.
Yep.
So there is the economic factor as well. Indeed, thank you. We appreciate timber more now,
Yes.
becoming a noble, for more noble purpose. That question was from Ansari Jainul Abudin. Thank you very much, Ansari. We have another one from Adi Hussaini. It says, many beautiful masjids have huge parking spaces located on top of hills, even though having pavilions and picturesque is located far from people's places, thus reducing the liveliness and its closeness to the community. How to overcome this problem and to ensure future mosque or masjid will be built with community in mind? I pose this to Azim first, maybe. Please, Azim.
Yeah, but one of the things that we notice in Masjid Sabajaya, you will also realize this. Nobody likes to park inside. You have Masjid Sabajaya has 600 parking bays, but people will park outside thinking that it's going to be full inside. So that's one the problem that these parking spaces is sometimes it become redundant. But I think in Masjid Sabajaya, one of the things that it is incorporated but not fully utilized yet is that it is also used during the day as park and ride, where you park your car and you ride. I think in the future, a lot of things can happen. And now that we are going to EV, electrical cars, so and then some of these places can be used as parking station, parking charging station. Also, the spaces of this is something that you have to work with if the Majlis or the local authority is to have use that space for um, like pasar malam, at times. So
Night
that
market, yeah.
night market, so that that space has not been lost altogether. But parking is always an issue. It becomes an issue, especially on Fridays, because there's going to be a lot of cars. There's only one time that parking is the problem.
Oversubscribed.
Yeah, oversubscribed. But there's only one time. The rest of the
Yeah.
time is going to be empty.
Yes.
You only need just a handful of car parks. But it's such a waste. There's another ways of thinking of using that parking area. Like for example, the one that we designed for Sabajaya, we also allow for the multipurpose hall, which is going to use for weddings and for other events, seminar, and you can rent it out. So that can also address some of the wastages on parking. So that sort of thought has to be put in play as well.
Thank you, Azim. Can I ask the same questions to Patricia for some views on this, if you can, please?
Well, I was just thinking as you were talking about this, that I wonder if there could be a way of thinking of making smaller mosques that are closer to communities where people can walk to them instead of these big, huge mosques where everybody has to drive. It used to be a tradition from my research that a mosque served a community sort of within walking distance. And that if we went to that sort of thinking, there wouldn't have to be the big car parking, that whole problem that we are all dealing with. Anyway, that's just a thought that just came into my head as we were talking.
Thank you. Maybe that also reflects some of your earlier works when, looking at the traditional mosque and different societies and how they can utilize. These are important questions. Perhaps I get Dato Hajeedar also to put your thought to this. Same questions, how the community can be better served instead of having large, big parking spaces. Maybe instead of 100 million mosques, we have 101 million mosques, something like that. Dato.
Yeah. Of course, I think to just build a mosque because you feel that that community needs the mosque is wrong. The community must demand the mosque. They must. This is why the term, the istilah or the word they use is the anak karya. Anak karya means the people living in and within that vicinity. So they are the one, because under the Sharia requirements, the very minute you have adults, 40 adults, you have to form a congregation. And you have to form a congregation. That's why you need a mosque, a place where you can congregate. So the residents there must be, because I had one argument with a very established architect, international architect, in my proposal for the iconic project for Iskandar in Johor. When Iskandar was created, they ran a competition, and that we are supposed to work in collaboration with some other international iconic architect. I had Mario Botta, as my co-conspirator, but of course, Mario has done many places of, designed many places of worship, churches.
I think we lost Dato for a bit.
We'll come back.
Yep.
He wanted the mosque to be right at the top of the hill. The highest point within the site should be where the place of worship should be. I disagree, because it should be at the base of the hill, because that's where accessibility comes into play. Because Muslims pray 5 times a day. So you have to, if you can, fulfill all your prayer times at the mosque, not only on Fridays, but almost every prayer time, every day. So how could you do that? You have to bring the mosque, the place of worship, within reach. Walking distance is one, within driving distance is another. So this is the kind of thing. And the car park issue is just some regulatory obligation that most architects go through in order to get your plans approved. You must somehow fulfill the car parking requirements for different buildings, and they have a guideline for that. But in the case of a mosque, as Azim puts it, it is absolutely full and overflowing in a mosque every Friday. Every Friday, the capacity is full. In the other, on the other occasions, you get 2 or 3 or even 4 saf only during the pre-COVID. Today with COVID, we get about 6 or 7 saf in the Masjid Bangsa. But on Friday, we are full to the brim. And of course, not only the car parks are occupied, but some car parks are organized to be the extended prayer area, as opposed to car parks. We discourage cars to come into the compound of the masjid, and they are parked outside, because there is a social acceptance and acceptability and tolerance for cars to be double parked on Fridays during that short period. So this is the kind of, you won't know it unless you live in that community. You won't appreciate and tolerate it if you don't, if you know the circumstances. So to me, car parking, one is to satisfy the criteria for the local authorities in terms of the provision of numbers of car park. And those car parks need not have driveways. The driveways can function as car parks too, because everybody comes in at one time and they leave at the end of the function.
Yeah, thank you, Dato. Yes, that's very telling. I think designing a masjid just for 1 day a week function, it require a really synergical relationship between your spill-off places and the actual masjid itself. I think it require a lot more than just what do you call it, calculation of how many parking required in that place. is it indeed is still a perennial problem? We see this along, not just in this country, but you can see it in other places too. Perhaps we need a better way of looking at it, and that comes why the last questions comes really handy, perhaps to finish it off in terms of comes from Kusalma. Yeah? What is the ideal relationship within the mosque, the masjid, and the marketplace or the city center? And I think I will save this last for Dato. I will start with Patricia again on this one. Please, Patricia.
Um, well, I guess that's what I loved about being in Java and Sumatra, because the mosque was adjacent to the market. And so there was this wonderful connection between mosque and everything that happened in the community. In India, in Kerala, that connection was more, well, I'll just think about Calicut. The largest mosque, the most central mosque, is located right next to the huge pool, which is a big important part of every Indian town. It's where all the water, these pools that they have. And then there was the market. So as far as the design of this community, there was market, water, masjid, prayer, the things that one needs in life. One needs prayer, water, and food. So there was this lovely connection between everything that we really miss in our modern cities. And the other thing, of course, and I hate to get back to cars and parking, is how do we remove ourselves from cars for the future so that we can live a life that isn't so dependent on this machine, the car. So these older communities give us some hints as to how people lived before we had cars. And that was locating, I mean, obviously the cities are very dense. I think of Penang as it was in the 90s. It was very dense with people. And so everyone walked. Things have changed since the 1990s, but maybe that density combined with markets, masjids, and everything that people, schools that people need, is something we should aim for in the future as we build.
Thank you, Patricia. That's that's deep, insightful indeed. We lessons from Monsoon Mosque, I guess, in the way they have sort of put together or be part of the juxtapositions within the community, how they are put together to suit that particular community's running or function. We ask the same questions to maybe Azim first. Maybe also reflecting some of the slides that you could not present earlier. Azim, can you put your thoughts to this and share it with us? Thank you.
A couple of things about, one of the things I want to go about is the community mosque, because mosque in the future, what I look at is that it has to be incorporated from various ages, from young to the old age. That's where I was in the beginning slides saying that when you retire, mosque is going to be your center as a Muslim, and your school bearing children is also going to be in a location where there is you don't have to go cross town to send, so you can just, it's a safe place for all various, and it's a cradle to grave sort of development where you go to Quranic classes, when you go to school, your Sadika or your child's care school, to your secondary school, your primary school. So that area, once you design in such a way that you can not and it's walking distance, and you don't have to travel by car. Everything is compact, and you can leave your car at home, and you just have a walk, or you use transportation, public transportation, which is reliable to prevent over congestion. And people here in Malaysia, because of the weather, even if it's just 5 minutes drive, they will get into your car
Yes.
They won't drive.
And park
They
right
will
in
walk.
front of the shop. Yes.
And right inside the shop. So that is a cultural thing, and that is
Okay.
they're trying to avoid the weather and all that. Then, but if everything is just nicely designed, walking distance, and covered with landscaping, and it won't be too hot, then you don't need vehicular transportation. People go to school. It's a safe place. You can just walk to school, and then you want to walk to wait while your parents are working. You can go to the center, like the community center in the mosque, to do your other Islamic studies. So you as a parent will be safe, and your elderly parents can also go there, and they can have a service where they can send them home whenever they want to, and the whole revolves around it. And you don't need cars, you feel safe. And it takes a lot of working and understanding by the community, and also the people who are in authority.
Thank you,
Then you can
Architect Azim.
use you
Yeah.
can you can reduce the
Yeah.
one thing I want to add about timber, which I is something that I really want to use actually, which I think is Patricia is correct. One thing is I tried to find glue lamination. One thing is expensive. The other thing is not widely available here. If there's a long span glue lamp, then it will be excellent. You don't have to use concrete, because concrete, as you know, is one of the most carbon
Yeah.
extensive
Yeah.
material. That you're gonna reduce. You can't reduce your carbon footprint if you continue using concrete as your building material.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Architect Azim,
Yeah.
for that thought and sharing. We save the best for last for this one. Dato Hajeedar, if you can respond
Sorry.
to that same
Oh, okay.
question. What is the
Yeah.
ideal relationship between masjid and the marketplace or city center from your perspective?
Yeah. Okay. Of course, you can have you can conceptualize the ideal masjid to serve the community, but very often it's the reverse. The community is already there. The community is already there, and then suddenly they realize that there is a need for a masjid. This is the classic case. I would like to refer to the Bangsa experience. Yeah, Bangsa was developed into different housing areas, and nobody thought, not even the local authorities in City Hall, thought about providing for the religious facility of the community. So the history of it, I think is worth sharing, and I
I think apology. There's some minor disturbance here with the audio.
for our prayers.
Oh.
So therefore, we need a congregational space for prayer, which is a mosque, not a surau. I'm talking about a mosque. So this is why we started to look at various empty lots in and around Bangsa, and we identified some, but hall flats. There's a large population of Muslims there. Then we have Bangsa Baru. Then we have Lucky Garden. Then we have Bukit Bandaraya. These are the sources of the community that requires the masjid. So this is why we started to study, and we identified the corner at Jalan Ara was the most logical place and central place to serve that community, because people can walk. Forget about the car issue. The car issue I can answer, because you don't compare Malaysia with Indonesia and India. There are three different countries at a different social status. We don't have to backpedal in order to appreciate. We just move and respond to what we need today. So for example, when we wanted to do Bangsa Mosque, we identified that land. but it belongs to the developer. It's a commercial piece of land. It has a higher value than even your bungalow lot with a plot ratio of 3. But fortunately, the project manager happens to be my childhood friend who went to school with me from primary school to secondary school, and he went to tech college, but I went overseas to do architecture. But we meet again in this community. And through him, we said, let's talk to your boss. Can we have that piece of land? He said, it's a very expensive piece of land. And we said, no, we know it is expensive. So how can we have that? He says, you either buy it or we've worked something out. So this is where we initiated the negotiation with the City Hall to transfer the development potential of that particular land to their adjoining development. So that that land can be freed. 2-acre piece of land was designated overnight. You know, a lot of fencing before we finally got at Mosque. And about the totalness of this thing. In fact, prayer and social center for the community, but it was also for schooling, as Azim put just now, morning sessions and afternoon sessions. We had religious classes for kids there, and it became a social contact points. Most of the parents who work in and around Bangsar will drop their children there, and they will come back in the evening. And there is always the social interaction. And some of them today have grown, and they are in their 30s, then in their 40s. They come back to talk to us and say, remember you used to whack us, you know, for playing around in the mosque when people are praying, you know. And he is one of the imams. In fact, he was the first imam appointed when we finished our mosque in PJ. He came up to me and says, Tuan Haji, do you remember me? I said, why should I remember you? Remember you whacked me. I said, oh, so what happened? So now I became an imam. No, it's that kind of community value and contribution. We don't care who does what, as long as you work for the common ummah. You see, this is the issue here. Is the mosque is not for one person, it's for the total. Because as Azim put, from birth to, from cradle to
grave.
Cradle to grave. Okay.
Yes.
That's why traditionally most mosques have the cemetery just outside the mosque, next to it. Because it's a common reminder for the community. Akhirnya, in the end, that's where you will end.
Yeah.
And this is why, if you look at the history of mosque, like the history of KL, for example, it's been debated, argued, who were there first. The best reference, go to the graveyard. Every graveyard has a tombstone, and every tombstone is the name of the date of death. Now, that was among the early settlers in KL, for example. That's a classic example, and that we can use to logically establish what it is here. Kusama just now posted something about Hajeedar will know about Mendelings and Minangkabaus. Yes, we know, but we were not born there. But we have our roots there, and we want to know. See, for example, KL, the first masjid in KL was not Masjid Jami', Masjid Kampung Rawa. Masjid Kampung Rawa has that 3-tiered roof.
Yes.
And that 3-tiered roof, technologically have been understood by them. It is to encourage cross ventilation. Hot air rises, you know. So when it rises, it escapes through the levels of the roof. So these are the fundamentals, you know, not only just looking at the mosque as a human settlement. Don't have a mosque if there are no human settlements. the human must request for it, you know.
Indeed, Dato. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
It's a very telling point, very telling point. And I just maybe remind me of a poem by Rumi on the one of the piece called the Far Mosque. It says, a mosque, yeah, a masjid, is not built of earth and water and stone, but of intention and wisdom and mystical conversation and compassionate action. So I like that. It's all about the
Yeah.
ukhuwah, about the friendship.
Exactly.
So yeah, sorry, I don't want to upstage you on that one, but I think the way we look at it, it is initially about the population, it's about the career, about the community. By the way, we are actually way over time. I've been reminded by facilitator, we are well over time, and I'm sorry to have taken it this long. Sorry, Patricia, especially from all the way from Italy, is a long way away. But we have one very last question, which I probably like Patricia to address, if I may. Is that all right with the rest of the panels?
Please.
Okay. The question is, if I recall, is from Professor Dr. Dr. Norina Nawami. Yeah. Assalamualaikum. Thank you to all the speakers and the beautiful design masjids. Can anyone of the speakers elaborate on the requirements for women, as most masjid is not very much women friendly? They're very much a male venue. Now that's I think is a very, what they call it, sekap jarang, is a very generalization statement. Maybe I'd like to probably have only maybe one person to address it. And can I ask Patricia to address this? I think we probably need another session on this, but yeah, please, Patricia, you are the last to comment on this. Thank you.
So obviously I am not an expert on this, but my experience as a woman going into the masjids varied greatly from the different countries. But I think that it seems to be that more and more of the mosque are thinking that women should be a part of should be a part of the whole events of the day. And I have noticed, and I can't remember where, that they had a mosque that was just for women in one of the countries one of the places I visited.
That's one
where?
in China.
No, there are many in China.
In China,
Yeah.
yes.
And
In China, they have mosques dedicated just for women.
Yes.
yeah. But I think that sort of as architects and, you know, all these problems of space, it seems like the best solution would be to have the women be a part of the community and be a part of Friday prayer and be a part of being able to, most of the mosques, women could come in and pray anytime they wanted, especially in Southeast Asia. So I guess I would hope to see that happening more, not less, but I cannot predict the future. And, you know.
Can I answer that in 2 seconds, in 2 minutes? Because I've done
Yes, please,
more recent mosques which incorporate the women. And
Thank you,
in Selangor, and now follow up with many other mosques, women praying not Fridays, but during the day, on the left side of the mosque, where you have what you call it, shutters or to block the view. And also in our newer mosques, we are incorporating a separate ablution area for the women, and also for a bit of a changing room, so they don't have to go out and go in, and they can pray without, you know, they can change and pray within that. So left hand side, and incorporate a small ablution area, so that it's easier for them to pray. And during Fridays, those days is upstairs, and over and upstairs also you allow for ablution. If you want to allow women back, those days women are allowed to pray Fridays. Now they are stopped that from happening, but they are praying on Eid. Women on Fitri or Eid, women are allowed to pray, but not exactly on Fridays.
Thank you, Architect Azim. I think, like I said earlier, so Dato also wants to have a few things. You need to unmute yourself, yeah. In 30 seconds, Dato.
Yeah, in fact, I think there's a misconception here. All the while, there is a position and place for women in the masjid.
Yeah.
I must tell you that. It has to be reminded that there is. Don't assume that there isn't provision for. In fact, I think it is wrong to assume.
Yep.
And I thought Noina's question is redundant.
Thank you,
Okay.
Dato. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
No, yeah, that's all. Yeah.
It's fine. It's fine. Yeah, I think if I were to conclude all this, I think it doesn't do justice to have a session on this over a space of 1.5 or 2 hours. The conclusion would be we need probably a different sessions or a series of these kind of talks over the future. That relationship between masjid or mosque in the community is obviously changing over time, and the role of technology in the current ones, people were talking about, why have azan if you can listen to that in your phone, in your watch, or in your computers. These are issues that we need to continue to address over time. But of course, the basic of it's all, again, I like to recap to what Dato was saying, a couple of things, which is the community actually built the mosque, and it's that relationship of the community that can create the demand for a masjid to be built. And I think that's probably valid over time. I think most history will know, as soon as, when Rasulullah came to arrive in Medina, the first thing he did is build a mosque, because there is a need for it. And Azim also talks about cradle to grave. It's like, I just remember farm to fork now. I mean, it's like cradle to grave in terms of, our society. When the first thing you hear when you're born is the azan, and then as you go, you will listen to the talqin at the end when you're already down on the ground. We are moving in that direction, hopefully to view it from that perspective in the more contemporary times. And of course, from Patricia, we are reminded from her books, from her works, that lessons from this monsoon mosque, like you described it, and now beginning to understand a little bit more from before, what was described as monsoon mosque relates to. Maybe this is the socio environment, or the ecocentricness of masjid instead of the ethnocentricness of it. How the relationship of socio-economy and socio environment comes to play, because the element of monsoon, of course, climate, maybe that this probably gives rise to the forms of masjids or mosques that build in those regions that you have studied, and especially the Southeast Asia, Nusantara region, all the way to the same place of India. I am thankful for all those who have asked questions in our Facebook or YouTube channel that we have, or LinkedIn. Thank you, everyone who has been persevering with us. Now we have extended time beyond the 1.5 hour. We're nearly 2 hours. But I thank again our distinguished panelists today. We have Patricia Fels, all the way from Italy. Thank you, Patricia. Hope to see you again in the future.
Yes, hopefully. Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you. And Dato Ar, Architect Hajeedar Abdul Majid, stalwart in the Malaysian architecture and urban design. Welcome to our forum, Dato. And we hope to see you more often in this session, and hopefully join us in Pereka Bandar also, Dato. And we have finally Architect Azim Aziz, another sort of prominent figures in the design and architecture of masjid. Both Dato and Azim has extensive experience in this, and obviously why we invite you today. Inshallah, we should have more sessions in the future. On this, I call upon our facilitator to facilitate this in the future, perhaps, because I think it doesn't do justice just what Azim is presenting today. Over the years, what Dato had experience with Masjid Bangsa is an amazing experience, and that is where we deal with the party on the ground, the components of development players or stakeholders that is determining how we design masjids and mosques in the future in the current contemporary setting. I think that's we can't forget that. And obviously we thank Allah for his blessing, for enabling us to gather today on this session. Thank you. Thank guys in the background there, Dr. Rohaya and Shukri, and not to mention Ku Salma from Arika Books, who had made this possible. And and also our able facilitator, Dr. Nurul Nazrin. With that, I would like to close this session. We thank everyone again, and billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi ta'ala wabarakatuh. Thank you, everyone.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.